Welcome, everyone. I want to introduce you to Kimberly Goesling. She's been a longtime flight attendant with American Airlines with a work record that puts her among the company's best. In her 30-year career, she's been a flight crew leader. She's worked on the airline's recruitment and training teams. More than once, she's received glowing reviews for her work performance, often resulting in special assignments. In January 2018, one such trip took her to Germany, where along with other American Airline employees, she helped develop a special international menu for first and business class passengers. Also on that trip was a celebrity chef whom American hired. On the final night of the group's stay, Kimberly alleges that the chef forced his way into her hotel room and sexually assaulted her. Kimberly is now suing that chef along with American Airlines, alleging the company knew about prior allegations against that man and much more. I also want to introduce you to Rob Miller. He is Kimberly's attorney and he is from the law firm Miller Bryant in Dallas, Texas. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So Kimberly, I know up until this point that you've been known in all the court documents as Jane Doe until now when you decided to come forward with your name and your face and to tell me your story. And I just want to thank you so much for your bravery and courage because I understand. And while every story is so personal and different, I know how isolating this experience can be. So thank you for your courage. So I'd like to go back and start, if we can, Kimberly, to talk just a little bit about your career and how you worked your way up at American Airlines.
Sure. I was lucky enough to get hired, and right after I was hired, it was, let's see what else I can do. You know, that's one of the things with being a flight attendant. You have the opportunity to do a multitude of different things with supporting not only just product delivery, but the training department. We had to actually be with the company for 5 years before you could actually even be considered for any special projects. And as soon as I hit that 5-year mark, I hit the ground running, and it was like, hey, what can I do? And started out, my first assignment went down to Greensboro, North Carolina, and that's where the call center was for our elite guests. And it was answering calls and giving feedback and guidance. And then from that, it was being a part of the onboarding of the Airbus aircraft 319 certification team with the FAA. And we were the first North American company to certify that particular aircraft model. And then that just evolved into where I was then asked to be a flight service manager out of Philadelphia. And my career just took off. It was one door after another. And then fast forward to when the merger happened between US Airways and American Airlines. Again, that even opened more doors. And it was, I mean, an incredible, exciting, there was not only could you be a flight attendant and be a part of other people's journey and travel the world, but then you could also take advantage of other, special assignments.
Yeah, so you had and do still have this long, industrious career with them. So I want to go back to January 2018. I mentioned it in the introduction where you go to Germany for this special trip. You've been selected to be part of this premier group of people. So tell me a little bit about the event and what you were doing there.
So in December of 2017, I received a phone call from one of the food and beverage managers inviting me that myself and another flight attendant was selected to travel with managers from corporate to head over to Frankfurt, Germany, actually to Aachen to work with our vendor for developing food and service amenities for all of our European destinations back to the United States. And we arrived and we hit the ground running. It was, you're not only were, I mean, myself and the other flight attendant that was invited to attend the trip, we were there because we knew what was going to work and was not going to work on our aircraft. So we went through menu tastings and, product delivery. It was a quick, it was a nonstop week, and it was filled with, I learned so much just from what it takes to have the food created in order to be able to serve it to our premier guests on our flights. It was what had taken place on that on our last night. It was it's something that you never think is going to happen to you. And we retired back to the hotel. I went to my room, and as I was studying for my yearly recurrent training, I started to receive texts that were very shocking from the celebrity chef. And he was wanting to pursue me, wanting to invite me, try to get me to come back down to have another drink, trying to get me to go to his room. And it was, I was again trying to be, not only was I not interested, but it was still trying to be the gracious representative from American Airlines and not do anything that was unprofessional. After I ignored his texts, they kept coming, and I received, my phone in my room started to ring, and I'd pick it up, and crew members, nobody other than a wake-up call, nobody really ever calls you. You're all communicating via text, you're all, normally your personal device. And I had unplugged my phone. I called the front desk. They didn't know who was calling. They hadn't transferred any calls in. So I finally just unplugged my phone. That's something that you do because it happens sometimes where people have missed or transposed numbers. And I just thought it was a mistake. Went to bed. I was flying back to the States, the next day. And in the middle of the night, I was awakened by somebody pounding on my door. And I, jumped out of bed and didn't quite really, know what was going on from the standpoint of just, time difference with, just the stress of the week, and you're exhausted. And then I realized that it was coming from my door. And as soon as I went over to the door, I opened the door up, and that's when he pushed his way in.
I know how hard this is for you to relive what happened to you. And I'm going to go to your lawyer now, Rob, to sort of pick up and tell us what happened after that, Rob.
Well, what we found, Gretchen, is that there is a culture of sexual exploitation at American Airlines. And I'm going to come back to your question, but we found women as far back as the 70s who were drugged and raped while they were employed by American Airlines. What we know about this particular chef was American knew very well. He'd been drunk at a number of events, American events. He had been inappropriate with other women at American Airlines, and they reported it to vice presidents. No file was kept on him. No action was taken. When he forced himself into the room, he sexually assaulted Kimberly. And she fought him off, and she did everything she could to get away from him. He pinned her to the bed. He literally digitally penetrated her. When she finally she put her in a chokehold before he did that. After he pinned her to the bed, she was able to, because he was very, very drunk, and he admitted this later. And oh, by the way, he admitted to a number of people at American Airlines that he did this. They know he's admitted it more than once. And so then she retreats to a corner of the room and he lays on the bed and talks to her about how hard he is, what he wants to do to her. And she's just saying, please, please leave. So he's literally blocking her escape and holding her hostage. He mutters a number of things, and this felt like forever, I'm sure. But he finally left the room. And then after he left the room, he starts sending more text. I felt you. I want more. Come to my room. All kinds of other things. And then in the morning, after he sobered up, he says, I was totally drunk. Certain people encouraged me, and those people were managers at American Airlines on this trip. They were the ones that knew his room number. They were the ones that gave him the drinks, and they encouraged him to do this. And I know that sounds incredible, but that's what the evidence in this case shows.
So you're alleging that the American Airline employees who were down in the restaurant or the club or the bar with him that night, and Kimberly, you were there originally, right?
That is correct, yes.
At a dinner. You're alleging, Rob, that those American Airlines managers gave this celebrity chef Kimberly's hotel room information.
I am. One of the managers booked all the rooms for the crew. He was actually in the room next door to Kimberly's. He checked in at the same time. That's the only place that the chef could have gotten the information. That was also the same gentleman at the bar drinking when the chef started sending messages to Kimberly saying, come to my room, I'll let you know when I'm there. What the evidence shows is he was sitting at the bar with an American Airlines manager sending text to her saying, come to my room.
And so after this happens to you, Kimberly, I mean, I can't imagine what you went through. And I'm trying to figure out in my mind how you would even be able to put yourself together to know what to do next. So what did you do?
You can't imagine. I mean, it's you hone in on your training, you hone in on, the things that we do with, being a professional woman. And it's okay, you know that you have to go home and you have to report it. And then once you get home, now you're still trying to realize and accept the fact that this just happened to you, because you cannot even imagine, like, you never ever think that something like this is going to happen. And so once I got home and my boyfriend at the time, he didn't understand what was wrong with me. And I didn't tell him because it was just trying to figure out and trying to process what just happened. And it went from, I was sleeping on the couch, and not because I just didn't want to go into a bed. As I tried to reach out to, managers that I thought would be able to help me, I was met with hesitation, and nobody would talk to me. And it just became frustrating time and time again. Right before I was able to report it to the manager that I ultimately did report it to, I went back to London in order to finish the program that we were working on. And it was on that flight coming back to Dallas, I saw that chef's picture, and I immediately sent an email to the food and beverage manager that I was working for and said, no, I need to schedule a meeting with you, because at that point I was done. And he initially said, okay, well, let's talk about this. And I said, no, he wanted to talk to me on the phone. I said, no, I'm going to come into your office. And that Monday I went in to meet with him. It was extremely hard for me to talk about it. And he was the only one that was sympathetic. And he, explained to me that he was going to need to go get one of our HR members she came back into the room. It was the two of them, myself. And the first thing is that she said to me, Gretchen, was, what was I wearing?
Oh my gosh.
And right then and there, it's just, again, you don't think, you're part of this company that you have put, literally, you're giving yourself time and time again. And you just don't think that that's the first thing they're going to say to you.
I know, these things are so ingrained in our culture. That reaction when a woman has the courage to come forward is, it had to be obviously more than heartbreaking to hear that. But I'm interested in knowing that this one manager seemed to be sympathetic. So what did they say to you then about the case?
So after I shared with her what, I had just finished sharing with him, it was, okay, we're going to have to, she was going to have to take her necessary steps. There was going to be, excuse me, an internal investigation that I obviously knew that was going to happen. I had at that point turned over, as Rob had mentioned, all the text messages that he had sent to me. They had copies of that. They had reached out to me. They'd pulled me off of a few trips that I was scheduled to fly. They asked me not to go the workers' comp route. They had, here I am trying just to figure out what the next steps are, what I'm responsible for. And they assured me that they were going to take care of me, that they were going to make sure that I was pay protected for the trips that they were pulling off. And then the two, I was just to submit my expenses for my therapy. And so I left that corporate headquarters that day having a little bit of relief that, okay, they have my back. So once I was contacted that I needed to come in and sit down with the investigator that they had hired, they had at that point told me that I could not bring legal counsel, and that if I needed to bring anybody, it had to be somebody from my union. And I didn't really want anybody from the union to really know about this, not from a standpoint that they weren't going to support me, but it's, less is more. I just wanted to do the necessary steps in order to continue with this process and this flow. And then it was, if you don't participate in this, you will be terminated. My job was then on the line. So now I'm forced to do this. I was able to reach out with a union rep who came in and took detailed notes of the conversation. I shared with her exactly what I had shared with the other two managers that I had talked with. And it wasn't until probably just in the process of having this, I had no idea she was an attorney. And it's the things that at that point, you're just, again, you think that you know what you're doing, and it's not even, you can't imagine it. You just keep on thinking that the next day it's going to be over. The next day it's going to be resolved. There's going to be resolution. And after I was continually pulled off trips, this went on for a solid 3 weeks. And I wasn't getting any information as to what the resolution was, what the resolve was. And then we had a special projects meeting towards the end of March. And one of the food and beverage managers that was on the trip with me pulled me aside and said, "Hey, can I talk to you for a minute?" And I said, "Sure, let's not talk here." I said, "But you do realize that I was actually asked by the investigator not to talk to anybody about it. So again, here I am following what their had advised me to do. And he's like, I'm just, that's when I found out that they had gone ahead and they had terminated the chef. And I had no idea, I remember leaving that meeting and calling my attorney and just saying, do you know that this has happened? And I, then went on to our website and his name was already gone.
So how did that make you feel? I mean, did it make you feel like they were, doing the right thing to a certain extent?
To a certain extent, it felt, again, I had that relief, but at the same time, I'm thinking, how come nobody could have told me? How come nobody could have at least come back and given me this information? And to say, we're sorry. Still to this day, Gretchen, I have not gotten an I'm sorry.
I understand that, because that's all that women survivors want to hear, is the accountability, right? And the I'm sorry, the apology. And so many women never get that. So I'm sorry that you have not gotten that. I want to bring in Rob for a minute again, because I want to get a sense from you, Rob, about when you came into the picture and how the treatment at American Airlines towards Kimberly, did they live up to, in your mind, the managers promising to pay for treatment and resolve this issue to the best of their ability?
Absolutely not. In fact, the woman that they told Kimberly was an investigator was in fact an employment lawyer who gave a deposition and said she was hired to help defend American Airlines. She interviewed the chef, she interviewed Kimberly. She didn't interview any of the managers or anyone else who had knowledge of this chef's prior activities. And then they hid the investigation from Kimberly for over 2 years. We only got the investigation the evening before, or the afternoon before, a hearing on a motion to compel that investigation. That's the first time she ever got to read the results of what they did. It's all about, go ahead.
What did you make of that investigation?
Well, number one, he admitted it and he agreed to resign. But American Airlines, this was classic from what we've learned. The whole point was to keep everything quiet, silence the victim. They're very efficient. They tell women who make complaints, who follow the rules, they tell them, if you tell people about this, we will blackball you and you will not fly. I've had multiple women tell me that.
And is that what happened to Kimberly?
Yes, she was taken off all special projects. What they tried to do was silence her, intimidate her. They called her elderly mother on a Friday afternoon and asked her all kinds of questions about Kimberly that no mother should have to answer. They were rude to all her treating doctors. They took her gynecologist deposition. They took her general practice doctor's deposition. They've done everything they could possibly do to try to intimidate her and silence her. And it hasn't worked.
So I know in the lawsuit, it alleges obviously sexual assault, but also conspiracy and retaliation. And in my experiences and talking to thousands of women after my story, the assault, of course, is something that you probably never recover from. But it's the retaliation that is the undersold part of the story. And I'm wondering if you agree with that, Rob, and also Kimberly.
Let me give you an example. When they took her deposition, they asked her which finger he used. She said, I don't know. They asked her 5 more times the same question. They asked her how far. They've just done everything they could possibly do to intimidate her and silence her. And it's appalling. It's actually kind of scary.
Well, I want to reach out, I did reach out, I should say, to American Airlines to give them a chance to issue a statement. And I want to read that to you now and get your reaction. This comes from American spokeswoman Shannon Gilson. American has an unwavering commitment to its team members, and we're committed to providing a safe and comfortable environment for everyone who works at our airline. Immediately after the incident was reported, we conducted an investigation and severed our business relationship with the accused individual. Because this matter involves ongoing litigation, we aren't able to comment further at this time, other than to say that Ms. Goesling remains a valued member of our team. Your reaction?
Well, that's certainly not the way they treated her. If this is how they treat their superstars, imagine how they treat the rest of their employees. She followed the rules. They said, report it. All their literature has all this fancy language about how we will protect you. They didn't protect her before she was assaulted, and they not only didn't protect her afterward, they re-victimized her because they kept putting her through this. They talked to her ex-boyfriend. They talked to her elderly mother. They've done everything they could possibly do to shut her up. That's what they've really done. I don't care what they say. That's what they've done.
So Kimberly, I know that speaking of being silenced, I know at first you wanted to be known only as Jane Doe. Was that because of what was going on, or what was going through your mind about not wanting to put your name and face on this story?
Initially, that's what I think from any sexual assault victim, survivor, you have that blanket of protection. And then to Rob's point, as the attacks continue to happen and they continue to do things and say things to me in order to intimidate me, to just stop this whole process, it was, this is me. At the end of the day, I am Kimberly Goesling. I've done nothing wrong. I pride myself with product delivery, working as a team member on any of my trips, anytime that I'm representing American Airlines. That's just how I am. They've tried to contact, it's not, they've contacted my best friends. They've tried to intimidate people that are part of my tribe. And once they contacted my mom, that was it. I just felt as though at some point this has to stop. And I'm owning my truth. This is my story. It's happened to me. I wish it hadn't happened to anybody, but if I have the opportunity in order for this to invoke change, both from a survivor standpoint, an assault victim standpoint, or corporations being held accountable to it's practice what you preach. Mm-hmm. Stop the intimidation, stop the bullying, stop the hate.
Well, I know you put out this social media video and it was really, really powerful. And I'm wondering how you came up with that idea, because that was before you were saying that you were Kimberly Goesling. So how did you come up with the idea, and what was the response to that?
It was, again, you think about how is it that we're going to get the message across that I'm not backing down, because everything that they were trying to do, which was trying to silence me, or to the point that I would give up and not continue with the fight. It was something that you keep on doing. It's the next step. It's one foot in front of the other. And the feedback that I have received from that, colleagues, friends of mine that had no idea that this had happened to me, they've reached out to me. They know me. They know that I have not been blessed with children, but I've been blessed with incredible dogs. And so they knew once they heard the story that it's me. And then as I was trying to not necessarily, tell them exactly what happened, because I was still trying to figure out what that next step was, it all goes back to within a week's period. They took my best friend's deposition, they contacted, my ex-boyfriend, they took his deposition. And then when they called my mom, nobody should have to go through that. Nobody should ever have to be attacked, but then the one company that you if you're blessed to have a job where you have passion for it, and at the same time earn a paycheck, that's a win-win.
Mhm.
But when you realize that all you are to them is an employee number, and they don't care, because there's another one right behind me.
So Rob, what do you hope happens for your client?
I hope that a jury sends a message to American Airlines that you don't treat your employees and sexual assault victims like this. They need to quit trying to intimidate people, intimidate women. It's not just women, it's men too. There's sexual assault going on against men. A Tarrant County jury needs to send a message to them that they need to stop. They need to do what they say they're going to do. Follow the pretty language and all the fancy brochures and actually do what you say. And by the way, tell her you're sorry, because this happened because of what they did. They put that chef there, they got him drunk, and they encouraged him to assault her. They need to say they're sorry, and they need to not ever do this to another victim again, ever.
And I hope that you get that apology, Kimberly. And I also hope that you can continue working, because the reality of people who come forward, unfortunately, in this country, is that the majority of them get pushed out and silenced, and they never work again. And I want you to be able to continue doing what you love. We've come a long way in what I like to call this revolution over the last 5 years, and we've made so much progress. And I think the next step is to allow women and men who have the courage to come forward, to allow them to continue doing what they love. So I certainly hope that that will be true for you. Is there anything else, Kimberly, that you want to say? And I just, again, want to thank you for reaching out to me to tell your story.
No, I appreciate this opportunity. I appreciate the people that are involved and have been, my biggest supporters. It's, you never give up. You never, if in your heart, we're raised that between right and wrong, we all know. And it's worth it if you just stand up and you fight. And, thanks to, sadly, with what you've gone through, I'm not going to go away, because people have to be able to talk about this, because if we don't talk about it, it's never going to change.
You're so right. I mean, it's through stopping the silencing and then continuing the discussions and transparency. It's the only way that we get this out in the open and change the way we approach these things and honor the people who come forward. Kimberly and Rob, thank you so much for sharing your story with me. Please keep me posted on how the case develops.
Okay.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you, Gretchen.
And my purpose in starting this series, for those of you watching, is to lift people up who need it and to lift people up who are watching, for everyone to know that you're not alone and that there's an army of people out there supporting you. Thanks for watching.